Thank you. Well, this is a wonderful conference and a lot of great technical topics, and now for something completely different. So I'm going to invite you to spend just a couple moments and think about our career, our profession, and specifically a little bit about your career, but what we might do and whether we have a future problem looming. Part of my role is I'm the executive director here at Caltech for the Center for Technology and Management Education. And the center is the professional training arm of Caltech. So rather than deal directly with undergraduates and graduates, I deal with professionals like yourself out in the workforce. And we do classes in things like software engineering, systems engineering, project management, leadership, all kinds of things. So we tend to spend a lot of time kind of thinking about where's the workforce going. And I'd like you to just give a little bit of thought to that, perhaps, and maybe how that affects your career. So first of all, let me say that I think we all in the profession understand that there's a continued need for flight software engineers. It's growing. There's continued demand, both commercially and through defense applications. And partly that's part of a broader demand for engineers in general in society. We've come to the point where we've realized that engineers are really running the world. It is a good time to be an engineer, but that it's also creating a lot of demand. There's quite a few industries now that are stepping up to engineering and specifically software. And so it got me to thinking when I saw the workshop, are we going to continue to be able to provide experts like yourself to the flight software community? And what would it take on our part to be able to do that? One of the other trends I think we're seeing is just there's a lot of technology that's making folks like myself who got our aerospace engineering degrees a long time ago obsolete in the market to some place in terms of the skills and being able to relate to it. I remember the day where I got to where I read my PhD thesis and couldn't understand what I was talking about back then. And I've gotten to the point now where I can go to a technical conference like this and listen to a presentation like this past one, which was excellent, and I know all the words, but I'm not sure I really understand some of the concepts there. But technologies are changing out for us, and we have to recognize the fact that there'll be technologies that are on the forefront, like artificial intelligence and machine learning, et cetera, that we ourselves will kind of struggle to keep up with. So I think the short answer to the problem is we're going to have to find a way to do two things. Number one, we're going to have to be able to attract more students into STEM-related schools and specifically to flight software type careers. And then I think we're going to have to think about ourselves and our current workforce and what sort of retraining opportunities are there. And so I've just shown a little graphic just telling you how the world is changing. And this is just looking at software. It's taken from one of the articles on the kind of the dimensions the software industry is going. And what we see is there's just continuing demand for people involved in software. And the commercial market can pay a lot more than we can sometimes pay in the aerospace and defense world. Okay, that may be a shock to some of you, but you could probably take your degree and your skills and go off and make more money someplace. And I assume you're like I am and you appreciate the opportunities that you have in the career that you're there. But some of the millennials coming out are making different choices that way. So we've got to worry about what's really our focus going forward. That's compounded the fact that the age force is growing older, it's aging. I'm excited to see a lot of younger faces here in the audience, but I'm also seeing a lot of people my age and roughly in the audience here. And if you look at the demographic here, you know, there's a huge kind of camel hump here at the 46 to 55. It's estimated by one of the reports I read that about 40% of the workforce actually retired within the last 4 or 5 years in terms of aerospace and defense. Now, to some extent, that's mitigated by the fact that a lot of the, quote, retirees are coming back now part-time, doing some consulting, et cetera. If we compare kind of on the right that age distribution with other industries, we can see that we are largely a Generation X community, and we're starting to get largely baby boomers. And we're not attracting some of the younger engineers to this field. I don't know about you. I got involved in aerospace and defense because I wanted to win the Cold War, and we did that. And so now, what do? So, kind of broader sense. I want to kind of think broader, and there's a really wonderful document out there. The NCOSE, International Council of Systems Engineering, produced a couple of documents. They did a Vision 2025, and they recently updated that Vision 2035, and they tried to envision what does systems engineering look like in 2035, and what do we need to do to get there. And I think as software becomes increasingly important in the systems that we build, a lot of the conclusions that they draw are conclusions that apply to us in flight software as well. So I put the reference there so you can jump off and get a copy of it. And that's very, very interesting. I think you'll enjoy the reading. They make a couple of good points there. First of all, there's just really a changing context for systems and software in general. There are a lot of megatrends. We are using systems engineering and software engineering now to solve some big world problems. I mean, literally solving world hunger, literally solving climate change issues, etc. That's creating this huge demand for software in non-traditional industries. And you also see a lot of domains now where software is taking an increasing role, again, creating pressure on the workforce. More and more people are getting involved in some of those applications. So the world is changing. The role of software in systems is changing. The nature of technology that we use is changing. Even the enterprises themselves are demanding kind of different commitments. And that's not even reflecting the fact that the workforce has different demands now as they're coming forward. And all along, our practices are evolving. So conferences like this are good ways to kind of keep up on sort of the latest changes in software methodologies and tools. But we have to think more broadly in terms of what's the impact on the workforce? What does this mean? Does this mean we can all go in and ask for a raise on Monday? Or does this mean maybe we have a problem staffing the next generation behind us? The report has a lot of good information on it, and I'm not going to do a full report on it, but I do want to draw a couple of attentions to it. Firstly, just the nature of the enterprise changing. Things like supply chains, much more complicated than they were before. Systems thinking has become a prevalent need. And that's a good thing because it allows us to tackle some of these big societal challenges. But it's also drawing some of the people that might normally have gone into our field into some of these other fields and into business applications as well. The other thing is that our stakeholders' expectations are changing. Okay, so people want to get more involved in systems, more involved directly. Negotiations are more difficult. For those of you who work at JPL, having to work with all the multiple different stakeholders you have and trying to find kind of compromise solutions to some of the missions is becoming an increasingly bigger challenge. With that, we're also bringing in lots of stakeholders who are relatively unsophisticated, and so we need additional people to kind of help translate some of the technical questions, challenges, options, requirements, needs that we have to that kind of a non-technical audience. Technologies are changing. If the list on the left looks familiar, it's the theme for the conference. Just stole it right out of the abstract for the conference here. But that's a pretty hefty list. I would dare say nobody's probably familiar with all of those things on the left-hand side, but it would be tough to argue that any of them wouldn't be an important factor in some of the systems that we have to build going forward. Whole fields are opening up, like artificial intelligence. I don't know about you, when I look at things, I think artificial intelligence is going to completely change the world, and it's going to do it very quickly in our lifetime. AI used to be something we talked about, and we used to be sort of excited because Siri could tell us the time or the ball score or when Home Depot was going to close, right? But now we're looking at super AI applications that we can only dream of. And that's only going to continue. There's a couple of great presentations at this conference even on some of those related topics. Machine learning, data analysis, big data, all of those topics becoming increasingly important. and we're not pumping out enough students into the marketplace to satisfy the need for all those. So again, our field is changing at the same time. Our skill sets are starting to atrophy because of some of these new applications. So first of all, applaud you all because you're here. You're trying to keep up with all of that. But we can all recognize sort of the challenge that we have. There's a graphic from the System Engineering Vision 2035 that talks about all the related changes in materials, changes in underlying technologies, changes in power generation and storage devices, battery conditioning, etc. All of those hardware changes and other changes will impact software and the type of software systems that we build. Again, just a background for us to think about. So what kind of software people are we looking for? What if we wanted to get involved and kind of create the next generation of the people that are going to replace us in our jobs someday, the people that are going to come behind us as we become leaders and managers, right? What kind of leadership skills do we want? Really wonderful article by a couple folks at JPL here, and I gave you the reference. You should be able to Google it and look it up here. But they looked at a number of surveys through NASA in terms of what makes a good leader. And table stakes were the items in green, basically a good understanding of the product development life cycle or the system engineering V model or something like that. But when they started looking at leadership, one of the things that they recognized was a discriminator was leadership qualities. And they came up with all the things on the left-hand side. Okay. So think about the next generation. We can put them in a class on software engineering. We can put them in C coding. We can put them in artificial intelligence and machine learning classes. We can teach them the kind of things on the green left-hand side. But how are they going to learn the things on the orange side? How are they going to learn about basic problem-solving skills? How will they develop communication? Heck, let's not even think about them. Let's think about us. Can anybody look at that list there in orange and say, "Yeah, I got that covered. I don't see any deficiencies in me there. I can handle all that." If that's what it takes to be a good leader, we all have to think about ourselves as being continual learners, lifelong learners. And what are we going to do to continue developing skills? Right? Now, maybe you're going to join Toastmasters and develop some communication skills, but things like creativity, problem solving, even just sort of the attitude it takes to kind of focus on the requirements and the solution and that sort of thing. You'll hear a number of different presentations and case studies, and one of the things I'm always impressed by is how the people really focused on the problem that they had at hand and how creative they were at coming up with solutions. Right? So how do we nurture that in the next generation? And how do we nurture that in ourselves and continue to keep ourselves active as we continue into our careers that way? Okay? So I got lots of questions. I don't have a lot of answers, but I'm going to share a couple of thoughts I have with you, at least about how we might do that. First of all, I think it's our responsibility to inspire the next generation. So elementary, high school, and college students who are pursuing STEM careers, I want to encourage them to do that. It's a really upsetting statistic I saw lately that 40% of the people that start in a STEM career in college drop out before graduating, and they don't graduate. 40%. That's a huge loss. So what can we do? Well, first of all, I think we can encourage more people to get into STEM. We're going to need a much, much bigger workforce. So we can speak to classes, we can talk about what we do, we can serve as judges in science competitions, we can share our passions for the work. Every single person in this audience is here because you have a passion for what you do. You're willing to devote 4 days of your life in a busy schedule where the work you're supposed to be doing right now is waiting for you when you get back, right? But you're doing that because you're passionate about your work. We need to let people know about that. And we need to explain to people what are the career opportunities in flight software? What kind of things can you do? Sharing what we do. Growing up, I didn't know what an engineer did. I was lucky I had a grandfather who was a professor in engineering. I would never have even understood it at all. And I was still a little confused until I took freshman engineering in college. but we need to find ways to explain that. Secondly, I think we need to mentor those that are entering the workforce. Too often we just throw graduating students in and assume that somehow by osmosis they'll learn on the job. Okay, if you think about the list of items there in orange, it wouldn't even be clear to a graduating person, a new hire, that was things that they needed to manage, or how to set out acquiring those skills if they did. So I think we have to help them with that transition. Okay, help them understand. How many students do we have here in the audience? Okay, great. Congratulations. Thanks, guys. Thanks for being here. That's our future. We got to make sure that they understand how this works. And I'm glad you guys devoted the time to come here and listen. That's terrific. The third point is I think we need some new work environments. I don't think today's flight software engineer is excited about a gold watch after 50 years. There's got to be some other challenges, and I'll tell you, they're making some healthier work-life balance choices than I made as a young engineer. I was willing to work 60-hour weeks. I'm not sure this crowd is, and good for them. They probably shouldn't be. They're more interested in things like independence and flex time and remote learning and innovations, the chance to work on exciting new things, the chance to learn. Recognize they're coming at their careers a little differently than we did in our day. So we want to spend the time to think about that, understand what's important to them, understand how we can encourage that, help our businesses understand how to revise systems, how to take advantage of remote learning, how to devote more time to things like training and stuff, which is more important to the millennials and the Generation X's coming through in the world here. So recognize they need something different in the career and kind of help foster that from our position. And then finally, the last bullet I think is for us, right? We have to embrace the idea of being lifelong learners. That's true for the new graduates too. You guys will see a different world in 20 years than we did, but we're going to see a different world in 5 years than we see right now. So take advantage of the continuation education programs that are out there. Caltech's one example. We live in a very, very rich continuing education world with things like edX and Coursera and all kinds of free opportunities, all kinds of conferences like this, all kinds of seminars, all kinds of professional associations, papers, almost infinite access to material and articles and presentations on the web. TED Talks alone could keep you occupied for the rest of your life. So think about those. Chart areas that you want to learn on and look for courses or look for materials that you can do that can keep you up with that. And encourage your staff to take some time out. Keeping your nose to the grindstone gets you a flat nose. Doesn't keep you active in your community. And what got you here won't get you there. So just encourage everybody to kind of do that. We've got a tremendous opportunity. I hope we can take advantage of it. It's going to require a huge effort on our part, and that's going to require a lot of effort. But isn't that what the stars are for? So, thank you.